Network Entertainment.
This episode may cover sensitive topics like sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking, which could be triggering. While we recognize the challenges this content may pose, we advise you to prioritize your safety and well-being.
Shocking, sad, revealing, and deeply researched, PH Murder Stories podcast covers the true account of infamous killings and true crime stories from the Philippines.
There's no such thing as questions, just hidden answers. Stay tuned as we revisit the inconceivable crimes that exist.
Some listeners may find the following content of PH Murder Stories highly disturbing due to its graphic nature. PH Murder Stories does not condone nor promote violence of all sorts.
Viewer discretion is advised.
From time to time, we make it our way to feature episodes with good outcomes. We know our podcast features true crime cases and accidents caused by humans or natural disasters, most of which did not have a happy ending, not that we expected it to be. However, we stumbled upon a story way back in 2010 at Dalaguete, Cebu, where a pine tree saved the lives of 32 people inside a bus that was about to fall off a cliff. This story was so amazing that we really need to go out of our way from our usual stories to cover this one for our listeners.
Speaking of good outcomes, our team would like to congratulate Carlos Yulo for winning 2 gold medals in the 2024 Paris Olympics. His dedication and perseverance to his craft inspires us even more to keep doing our best every day. You are listening to the PH Murder Stories podcast, and this is the 13th episode of Season 4. Many thanks to Bingo Plus for sponsoring this episode.
In 2010, 32 vocational students and teachers from the Don Bosco Technological Center were in Dalaguete, Cebu for a 2-day youth encounter. They rented a bus from NB Boy Bus Company. As they were cruising along the roads of the area, a freak accident occurred. The radiator tank of the bus overheated and splashed hot water to the bus driver's right thigh and arms. For a brief moment, he lost control of the steering wheel, the engine stopped, and the bus slid back down a ravine. In an attempt to control the bus from going down deeply into the ravine, the driver managed to aim for the pine tree planted at the edge of the cliff. Thankfully, the pine tree was strong enough to be able to serve as a blockade between the bus and the ravine. Every passenger was safe. No casualties were reported.
Almost 50 years ago, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗚𝗢𝗓𝗔, who worked for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources as an area caretaker in Dalaguete, Cebu, planted pine trees all over the area. Luckily, one of the trees he planted was strategically positioned at the edge of a cliff. 34 years later, after planting that pine tree, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗚𝗢𝗓𝗔, who was 98 years old at the time of the accident, managed to celebrate the fruits of his labor by posing a picture with a bus leaned back towards the pine tree he planted before. You can check it out from our Instagram post. In a media interview, he expressed his happiness and advocated for the good outcomes from tree planting and wished that the younger generation would realize the importance of planting trees.
If you are wondering, what would have happened if the pine tree was not planted? According to locals, the ravine was 500 feet deep. Below the ravine, the river was said to be inhabited by a lot of rattlesnakes. Thankfully, the pine tree was there and every passenger in that bus accident was safe. From that moment, this incident will remain as an unforgettable experience, or what we call the ultimate cliffhanger. Indeed, planting trees is important to our environment. In this story we just covered, prove that trees are much more useful than their usual benefits. Trees do help prevent accidents as well.
Thank you for listening to PH Murder Stories.
If you like this episode, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
You can also support our show on Patreon. Any amount you donate would benefit our team to keep doing what we love, which is to provide more true crime episodes for our listeners. Link in the description.
For further updates from our show, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at PH Murder Stories. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at PH Murder Stories.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.